Hello, my name is Caitlyn Seim, and I'm so glad to present to you today about wearable stimulation for motor learning and rehabilitation. Unfortunately, I'm traveling today, so I won't be able to join the symposium in person, but I'm really glad to be among the great speakers and to share my talk with you. So what I noticed is from the Kai workshop that inspired this symposium, this quote here forms the basis of my presentation. The overarching topic proposed here is the design and development of assistive technology, user interfaces, and interactions that seamlessly integrate with the user's mind, body, and behavior, providing an enhanced perception. We call this assistive augmentation. And here, I use wearable technology to enable some new methods that stem from the integration and interaction directly with the human body. So my work is based on haptic technology. And as you've probably heard, this is technology for the sense of touch. That can be everything from feedback from your cell phone, tactile and vibrotactile feedback, to kinesthetic and force feedback from robotic apparatuses. And what I do is I combine this haptic technology with wearable technology to integrate haptic feedback right on the body and for extended periods of time. So a little background on the work. Haptic training is used in some research where you apply haptic or tactile or physical cues to individuals who are trying to perform physical tasks, like this person in the image. It can provide some physical guidance or some tactile guidance in performing tasks. And so haptic training specifically is when you use a haptic system during skill practice. And haptic feedback is commonly used during task performance to correct your error or enhance your task performance. But what I studied for the basis of this research I'm talking about here today was a little different step in combining wearable technology with haptic training to enable long-term input to the body, which can enhance the training effect, as well as enable that training to continue even when you're paying attention to other tasks. You can still get tactile feedback to your body through a wearable device. So it allows a little offline training and repetition that can be pretty powerful. So as I mentioned, wearable devices can deliver haptic stimuli to the body for extended periods of time and in the background of daily life. So you can imagine if you're wearing a wearable device and it has haptic capabilities, it could provide you some haptic cues. And this could either be for a long time while you're wearing the device. You could get hours and hours of haptic information, or it could be while you're doing other things. That's the beauty of these body integrated technologies. It can be in the background of daily life. And some of my research has shown that you can still get some tactile feedback and rehearsal from this time where you're attending to other things as well. It's well known that focus can sometimes degrade performance on motor tasks, and thus we're able to perform and receive haptic and physical information to our bodies even when we're not strictly attending to it. In fact, attention sometimes can provide a bottleneck. If you think about when you focus too hard on typing, you might not be as fluent as you are when you focus less. So in these experiments on wearable haptic training, we've used wearable haptics to help train a number of skills, including there at the left side, the Braille keyboard. That's how you produce Braille dots, which are read by people with low vision. And so by providing some tactile cues to the fingers, over time and associating those with audio cues, we can help train this chorded typing system, which actually requires you to press down multiple keys at once to get one letter. For instance, you got to press down 4 keys to get the G letter and things like that. So it's quite a difficult typing system for people to learn. And what's really cool is you can actually extract information about Braille that you read with your finger from what you know about how to type, because there's a direct relationship between those dots of the Braille cell and the keyboard that you type on. So if you know these 4 keys are G, then you can also turn that and know that the first 4 dots of the Braille cell equals G as well. So if you feel that, that means that letter. And so we're able to use a wearable haptic system to provide intensive training on this typing method, and we were able to train people to perform this typing method at 94% accuracy on average after just 4 hours of passive training. And same with other things like codes, Morse code, typically an audio-based language, but we turned it into haptic rhythms, which you can get from a wearable device. And we've even addressed things like typing, which is a physical or motor skill that we know everybody has to learn at some point. So wearable haptic input can provide powerful training to the body by providing instructional cues to the body over long periods of time and even in the background of other tasks. But what's taking this the next step is we also know sensory input plays a key role in relearning function, which is what happens after, say, a brain injury like stroke. So stroke is a very ubiquitous brain injury. Over 80 million individuals with chronic stroke are alive today worldwide. That means they have a history of stroke. And when you have a history of stroke, that's a localized brain injury, and it's often in the sensory motor areas of the brain, which leaves you with one-sided paralysis to certain degrees. And so individuals with chronic stroke, 80 million of them, many of them have physical paralysis that they're left with after their brain injury. So they have degraded sensation and motor ability in their limbs at incidence upwards of 60%. And of course, it's a pretty heavy burden on the infrastructure. So stroke is an important brain injury, but just like learning things for the first time, there's actually a lot of potential in relearning the use of a limb after a central nervous injury like stroke. And that typically requires intensive exercise to the limb. But unfortunately, many people, upwards of 50% of those with stroke and physical disability, can adhere to the intensive exercises that might give them improved limb use after their brain injury, either because you have to use that limb for 6 to 8 hours a day, and that's too much for them, or because they have too much paralysis that they can't use the limb for exercise unless they can't get better. And that's why we're investigating stimulation-based treatments. And this is where technology is absolutely essential. So there's promising preliminary data that vibrotactile input, cutaneous tactile input to the limb is beneficial in limb function, even rehabilitation, relief of things like spasticity, which is involuntary muscle contractions. But the apparatuses currently used to apply this stimulation are just extremely stationary and laboratory-based. So they're simply not suitable for longitudinal application or study. So you can't study this method of therapy, this stimulation-based method of therapy, by using these current apparatuses. And we also know, of course, that sensory input plays an essential role in motor learning for any age. So in a recent experiment I designed a wearable stimulation glove, Vibrotactile Stimulation glove, VTS glove, I like to call it. And it provides intensive sensory vibrotactile input to the affected hand in chronic stroke. And it's as simple as charging it, wearing it, and repeating. This is not a method in conjunction with exercises, but rather I was investigating a solely stimulation-based method enabled by our assistive augmentation or our wearable technology. And so I executed a randomized control study on the use of this stimulation technology versus a sham device where the vibration stimulation was disabled. And we investigated its impact on a number of arm function measures after stroke. And these measures included sensory perception, tactile perception in the hand, range of motion, and muscle tone, which is that involuntary contraction called spasticity, which affects 40 to 60% of individuals with limb dysfunction after brain injury. And what we found in our primary outcome measure, which was the tactile perception, is there was a significant difference in those that received the treatment versus placebo condition, essentially. So wearable vibrotactile stimulation applied intensively using a wearable device was associated with a significant improvement in tactile perception, which was degraded in these individuals after their strokes. And of course, tactile perception is essential in everything from knowing that you've picked up an object without having to look and see, to protective sensation, which tells you if your hand's been cut or burned. I've had participants say, oh, you know, I cut my hand. I didn't even know till I saw the blood. So very important. And we also noticed a significant change in the spasticity or spastic hypertonia, which is the involuntary muscle contractions there's no good treatment for right now. And I'm currently doing a whole nother stage of clinical trials that investigates the potential for wearable stimulation to potentiate inhibitory and voluntary control of the limb, aka to relieve this spastic hypertonia in a way that we've never been able to achieve with other methods before. And finally, there was also significant change in range of motion, certain sections of range of motion, possibly because they had relieved muscle contractions and unlocked range of motion in their hands, which of course is associated with improved hand function. And here's a little video which I can show you. As you can see, this person has limited range of motion to begin with. And afterwards, he's able to extend his fingers as well as abduct his fingers or spread them.
And then I want you to curl it as much as you can.
Oh, yeah.
And flex and extend them as well.
Fantastic.
And open up again for me.
Which is a real marker of both
Thomas.
motor control as well as relief of that muscle contraction.
The motion in your hand, so can you show me make a tight fist, please? Excellent.
This person called that her Iron Man arm.
Definitely the sensations, like when we're doing these sensation tests,
Oh, yeah.
they're hugely different. And the vibrations from the glove, I can feel that. I mean, it used to be, when we first started with the glove, I wasn't sure if it was on or not. Sometimes I'd actually have to kind of press down.
Oh, I see.
But now it's like, okay, no, I definitely know it's on. It's all
So
the
you
way
can
up the
feel it
shoulder.
through this arm
Oh
now?
yeah, I can
Oh,
feel it all the way
that's a huge
through.
difference.
So
That's
it is
great.
a huge difference. Yeah.
So you say you think after the 2 weeks, you've noticed a change in the tone in his hand?
Yes, this is amazing. This is much more flexible. I can move his fingers. Before they were in a grip, real hard to even get them straight to get the glove on. But now I see a lot more flexibility, and actually when we're walking, I can actually hold his hand now.
I love that anecdote. And so in summary, it's important to point out that this is an intensive method of therapy, similarly to the paradigm of intensive exercise, and that's enabled by the wearable device. Each participant wore this device and received the input for over 140 hours each in just 2 months. And a wearable stimulation method is also accessible to those who have significant paralysis or very low hand mobility to begin with, as opposed to things like exercises, which are not accessible to that population. And participants also found even our prototype device wearable in patients outside the home or the clinic by wearing it at church, going to tea, attending shows. We have a breakdown of their activities on the right. And of course, we're currently evaluating some of the mechanistic pathways that work here, so we're able to optimize the treatment. And conventionally, a lot of people think that peripheral mechanisms of action, such as afferent input from the skin or muscles, can directly influence muscle activity acutely, but also we believe what we're seeing is the long-term potentiation of voluntary and inhibitory control through the central nervous system and the brain particularly. And some of my experiments are providing more data on that right now. And of course, thank you to all my funding sources, and thank you all for listening to this talk. I'd love to have any questions, but I'll have to address those via email. So have a wonderful symposium, and I hope to hear more soon.